Hey guys, TJ here. A lot of people have been asking, and I've played a bunch of keys on Meiko now and gotten pretty far, and I'm pretty comfortable in my opinions on the character, so figured it's time to make a guide. Um, I'm gonna do this in two separate videos. I'm gonna do a general Meiko gameplay fundamentals video, talk about talents, weapons, gearing, gems, and all that good stuff. And then I'm gonna make another video um, about how legendaries change your playstyle and how to better use the legendaries, whichever one you may get, and which one's best, of course. Um, so first, we can start with the rotation. Uh, Basically, just what your abilities do and when you'll have to use them and how to upkeep them. Pretty basically, at 4 targets, you're going to start using your kicks, and when I say kicks, I mean abilities that start with 2. Um, for your rotation, you basically combine 2 of your 1, 2, and 3 to create a finisher. So, for example, 2, 1, and then finisher is my builder for my kicks. And then 2, 3, and then my finisher is builder or spender for my kicks. And the same goes for the other abilities. 1, 2, and 4 is one of my palm spenders. 1, 3, and 4 is the other palm spender. And you can read what they all do here, but basically, if it starts with a 1, it's a maintenance buff, and you want to keep these up 100% of the time. So every 30 seconds, you're going to have to be using them. It's a little bit less of a load later when you get some specific talents, but that's how that works. And then in AoE, you're going to be doing the builder and spender with your kicks, which is your 2. And then in single target, you're going to be doing the same builder spender with your fists, which is your 3. It is important, rotationally, you always want to have, they're called Earthfall and Stormfall. I called it a generator earlier. You only want to use your spender, so in this case Earth Fist Barrage, and in AoE Lashing Storm Kick. You only want to use them when you have the generator ready. So basically, you keep your buffs up, your palm buffs, and then you decide whether you want to be AoEing or single targeting, and you just go through the builder and spender. It's pretty simple. There's kind of a lot of moving parts once you get into a poll and you're actually going through the rotation and trying to do everything else. But at face value, pretty simple. Now for defensives and cooldowns, we have Stone Shield, which is basically, in the end game, this is like pretty much 100% uptime. When you're going through contender and adept, you are gonna have gaps in Stone Shield. But you can basically picture this like Demon Spike, Shield Block, and WoW. And if you don't play WoW, it's just simply put a defensive maintenance buff. It is important to note this ability actually does a lot of damage. So while you don't want to be taking any melees without Stone Shield up, if you can help it, it is very good to help you out in the gather. And I'll explain where my Stone Shield lands in the gather as well in a minute, but it just note that it does a lot of damage for being 1 global. Next, we'll talk about Shatter. This is just kind of a threat opener damage cooldown, and with a specific talent it applies your buffs. You get this pretty early on, so it's fine to take note of. This is basically how you get into the poll comfortably and have threat on everything. And then we have, I call it sibling, a lot of EU people call it Dave, but Twin Souls Bulwark. This is literally just you place a totem and it tanks everything for you until it dies or expires. Usually dies. Doesn't actually live very long in high content, but early on this thing lives forever. But that's all it is. You just place it and it taunts everything in the circle. It's done different things at different points in time, but right now it taunts once everything in the circle. You can taunt off it, but if you drag something from out of it into it, it will not taunt new stuff. So it's a one-time taunt event. And then we have our utility, which I consider viable defensive tools. So the stun, especially, it's just a frontal stun, does okay damage, and lasts for 3 seconds. This is a good way to just pause the damage intake of a pull, or you can save it for utility, obviously, if that's needed as well. And then we have chains. This is just off global, sucks things around me on top of me, and that's it. The final thing I'll talk about, I I can't I can't say too much about this without getting into a lot of other stuff. But we have Serenity, which is off global on-demand heal. It stacks up over time, and it heals you based on how many stacks you have. Um, we have a lot in our talents and our legendary that interact with this. But at face value, you can just consider it like a very big health pot if you're high up on the stacks. If you're sending it at low stacks, it's not going to do much for you. But that's about it for class gameplay. So now I want to talk about how I do my opener. I think this is where most people struggle in keys, is getting through the opener. And I think this is probably where the most skill expression is. I'm gonna shatter here just to get my sibling back so I can show, but I'm not gonna have shatter for this one to demonstrate, but it's okay. I almost always do the exact same thing when I'm gathering. Say these are 2 packs. I would taunt from ranged and let them walk in and then body. And the second everything, especially the first pull of the dungeon, is in range for a chains, I chains and then sibling, and then I will shatter and I will fated strike, and then I will stone shield. First pull, every single dungeon I do this. The reason this works is because right when the dungeon starts, you're going to put your stone shield up and then mount, and then you get everything together. And while you're gathering, most of that stone shield is going to go away, and you need to buy yourself some time because you have very cluttered globals, right? Even if you don't sibling, which is a global, you still have shatter, you still have fated strike, you still have your builder for your AoE. So the sibling is important because he buys you time to get everything out. So like I said, everything's in range: cyclone, sibling, shatter, fated, and then you can start doing your rotation. And stone shield is usually going to have to be hit pretty soon after that fated. Really early on in progression, you're probably going to have plenty of stone shield through the first gather. But it's a pretty good habit anyway. And if you don't have fated yet, well, get a fated. But if you don't have fated yet, you just skip it in the opener and get straight into your rotation. So that's my first pull of the dungeon every time. Now, if you play with Earthborn, which we'll talk a little bit about later, you can do that gather for like 80% of the gathers in the dungeon. But if you don't play with Earthborn, I don't play with Earthborn, you're going to have to do a different opener. Not on the first pull, but you're going to have to do a different opener. And almost always it's the same concepts. I want to avoid melees, so like if something's far, I want to taunt and let it chase me as I bring it to the central point. And then when everything's together, I can again cyclone, but instead of sibling, it's just straight into shatter, stone shield, fated if you have it, and then get into your rotation. But obviously you don't have the sibling to buy you time, and what I use to fill this spot is Serenity. The Serenity buys me time to get into my rotation. So that's how I'm going to be using that deeper into pulls. And obviously, if you need an external for gather, you can take it from your healer. I usually don't take it for gathers, but it's completely fine to do that. You can use your dice trinket. We call it dice. It's called sanctuary if you want. If you don't have that, it's also completely fine. But Serenity basically functions as sibling for gathers that you don't have sibling. Um, so that's basically how you apply most of this stuff. Now, before I get into talents, I want to talk a little bit about Stone Shield, um, and just explain how Stone Shield works, because it's very important to understand what Stone Shield does so that you can better play around it. Um, Basically, when you use Stone Shield, you'll see this little bar right here tracking it. Stone Shield takes damage for you and splits it. And this health bar right here, so they're not going to do a ton of damage to me, but you'll see it goes down a little bit when I do take damage. This is a measurement of the Stone Shield's health. And all damage that I take is also damage that the Stone Shield takes. Uh, so, in other words, any damage that you mitigate, any damage that you prevent, any external from your healer, any DR from your kit, from your group, from anywhere, is good, because it extends the life of your Stone Shield. Stunning, just completely randomly, buys you 3 more seconds of Stone Shield. That's 3 more seconds to get your rotation out, 3 more seconds to get Stone Shield back off cooldown. It's uptime is uptime, and mitigation helps a lot no matter where it comes from. Um, and the rest is kind of just you. I think you lose a little bit of armor every time you lose a stone. Uh, but you do keep all the DR from it. So you do get a little bit weaker to melee attacks as the stone shield drops. Um, but not a ton weaker. So that's basically stone shield in a nutshell. So now let's get into talents. I talk about this setup a lot. This setup is like our bread and butter. Guardian's Fluidity, this is just the best talent in the tree. Um, this talent is just OP. It's the most Stone Shield you can get per point. Um, and also Stone Shield just does a lot of damage, so this is also just randomly a very good damage node. Um, we need Guardian's Fluidity, character wouldn't work without it, you click it immediately. In my opinion, your next point goes into Will of Stone. It's just so much easier when your first shatter in that opener I talk about gives you both of your buffs for 30 seconds. Amazing. It just smooths out everything so much. Super great quality of life, and it's only 1 point. I'm never taking this off unless some massive changes come. And after that, you're starting to look at talents that are like, these are just strictly powerful DR, and then the rest are kind of niche. So I always take these strict DR nodes because they're the only remaining points in the tree that are unconditionally strong defensively. So this is kind of just the bread and butter setup. For what it's worth, if you are going to drop either, I don't think you ever drop Will of Stone or Guardian's Fluidity. But if you are going to drop Resonance of Earth or Debilitating Vortex, basically Debilitating Vortex is stronger than Resonance on trash, and Resonance is stronger than Debil on bosses. But they're both very strong unconditionally, so take that information as you will. From here, I'm not going to talk too much about specific legendary builds. Like I said, I'm going to leave that for another video. But from here, you kind of have defensive minded nodes, and then you have like hybrid nodes that do damage, but damage is also defense because it helps your healing. So these defensive nodes, I would say, are Unwavering Spirit, Earthborn, Harsh Winds, Stone Guard, and Earthwell. I'll explain what they all do now. I think Unwavering Spirit is probably the best jack of all trades in this tier. This is basically just some spirit, which is nice, and then your spirit gives you Stone Shield when you proc it. Not bad for 1 point, not great for 1 point either. Earthborn is gonna just give you, I think most people when progressing probably all the way up to Paragon should just play Earthborn. I think your next 3 points should go here. Earthborn is just, you get probably 3 times the sibling uses over the course of the key, which kind of sounds OP at face value, but you're gonna lose. It's 3 points, right? So you're gonna lose a lot of rotational power to take it. But I do think this is really OP in the early levels. After you have this setup up here, and you should play for it in the early levels. Later on, I think it gets phased out for some other things. Now, harsh winds. Uh, Basically, just read this as you're gonna dodge a lot on bosses. That's it. This does pretty much nothing on trash, and the damage is pretty negligible. But really, really, probably the best point on the tree specifically for bosses that melee hard. Thinking Wormheart last boss, Sands last boss, but not a boss like Stormwatch last boss. That boss is more tank buster focused and magic damage heavy, right? So you're thinking about bosses that melee you really hard. Very good in Sithral's Fall, by the way. Pretty good in Demon Brand as well. Anyways, and then we have Earthwell. This is really, really good against bosses uh, that do tank busters. This basically makes it so every single tank buster that you fight on a boss, you are going to have a full Serenity for. So Harsh Winds is really good against bosses that melee hard. Earthwell is very good against bosses that give you extended tank busters, especially extended tank busters. Think Stormwatch, Empyrean Sands, kind of tank busters. I personally, in the early levels, would start with Earthborn, um, but I would generally play Unwavering Spirit, and then I'd consider Harsh Winds or Earthwell mostly in those early levels when I'm thinking defensively. Now, the hybrid nodes, as I call them, the damage nodes basically, useful damage nodes, I should say, are Rumbling Stone and Conclusive Strikes. These are also competing for all these points. What you're basically going to get out of Rumbling Stone and Conclusive Strikes is way more damage than the other competing nodes in Harsh Wind and Unwavering Strikes, and a lot more rotational healing, but absolutely no Stone Shield uptime. All this is damage and healing. Damage is useful, damage is healing, but no Stone Shield uptime. So if you are playing a key and you feel like you're playing Unwavering Spirit, Harsh Winds, something like this, if let's say you're playing something like this, you have Unwavering Spirit, and you just feel like you're rolling in Stone Shield, you can take Unwavering Spirit away. You could, or if you're playing something like this, you could take Harsh Winds away, Unwavering Spirit away, and put it in Rumbling Stone and Conclusive Strikes, and you're gonna do a ton of damage. Threat's probably not gonna be an issue anymore. You're gonna do a lot more healing rotationally, but you might run out of Stone Shield, so that you need to watch out for that. That's basically what you're picking between Stone Shield uptime through mitigation in these 3 points, or damage and healing through your rotation in these 2 points. So you got to make your own choice there. I can't tell you what's best. You just have to figure it out for yourself. Everyone has their own weaknesses and strengths. Some people are going to protect their Stone Shield better with gameplay, and they're able to play the damage nodes, and some people are going to have an insane rotation, benefit from the damage nodes, right? But some people might be excellent tanks, but maybe aren't protecting their Stone Shield, or their rotational gameplay isn't perfect, and you're really going to benefit from these things that help you with your Stone Shield and your cooldown usage, right? That's basically what we're looking at here. And now, I don't recommend any of these, but if you want to do big ass dam, you can go for Forbidden Technique, Thundering Kicks, and Perfect Storm. Uh, the these are like, I'm doing a baby key with my friends kind of talents. You're looking at dropping the setup. You're looking at like dropping Debilitating Vortex and Resonance for these damage nodes. This is not serious talents. This is doing big damage in front of your friends kind of build. So Forbidden Technique, Thundering Kicks, Perfect Storm can be strong, but not in a good way. Not in content that can kill you, is basically my thoughts on those talents. Now, the next thing to talk about, I think, is stats. Uh, This is pretty easy. Defensively, you want Spirit for a while, probably to around 1k. But Spirit is really bad offensively. I do think Spirit is the best stat. I'm gonna play for Spirit. I want a lot of Spirit. Um, because when Spirit procs, you're just super immortal. Basically, what Spirit does is it refunds the spender that you just spent. So if I spend a Stormfall, it gives me it back, but then also gives me Spirited Armor, which is a massive armor proc, 50% armor for 12 seconds. Um, so rotationally, that helps out a ton. I just get to keep kicking and healing, right? But also, I'm just super tanky for a while, and also it refunds me one of my 3 stones in my stone shield, assuming I'm playing this talent, which I do, right? Spirit, when that procs, is just insane, and getting more of it makes it proc more. I think there probably is a number you want to stop at. I don't have a lot of spirit on this character, I'm kind of sad about it, but like around 1.2 to 1.5k is like a nice sweet spot for spirit in my opinion. Um, Now, haste is a weird one. Haste is pretty much useless unless you're playing the neck, and then all of a sudden it's your best stat. Haste is pretty good when you're fisting, so single target, or if you're playing the neck legendary, and otherwise it's basically useless. You used to want a lot of haste so that you could have more stone shield uptime, which is basically what haste does. Um, but your builders, your 1, 2, 3, are locked global cooldowns. They are unaffected by haste. So the only thing that haste does for you rotationally is makes your Earth Fist Barrage channel faster, and that's how it gives you globals, which when you're kicking does not impact your character other than Stone Shield cooldown. And with the talent reworks, with Guardian's Fluidity especially, and new Unwavering Spirit, we're kind of rolling in Stone Shield. So Stone Shield uptime isn't really a concern anymore, making haste really bad. Again, unless you have the neck legendary, then haste is really strong because you're fisting forever. Um, Now, crit and expertise are basically the same thing, but expertise is better. It's just you do more damage, and because you do more damage, you do more healing. The math favors expertise a little bit more than crit. I think crit probably does a little more damage. Expertise does way more healing. Is basically how you should look at it. Um, Now, weapons. This is honestly, this is pretty easy. This weapon is good. Fists of Fate. This is the weapon you want. The rest kind of suck. The shield weapon is okay through contender and adept. Even in its best scenarios, it's worse than Fated Strikes. I'll show you why right now. So let's do my opener real quick. We get into a pull. We chain Sibling Shatter. Watch my cooldowns when I Fated Strike. I just get 12 seconds off of everything in my kit. The Shatter coming up way sooner. Lets me mess up on my manual buffs halfway through the pull. Super nice. I get half of a stone shield. My chains gets 10% of its cooldown refunded, right? It's just such a strong weapon for our kit. Super, super powerful. And it even gives you a 6-second window where you do 20% more damage and healing. So if I, in my opener, when I don't have Sibling, do a Shatter into Fated, I can send a Serenity with like 20 stacks, and because of this expertise window, it's actually going to heal for quite a bit, right? Just even just defensively in the window of expertise, it's strong. Beyond just the cooldown on everything. But yeah, this weapon, in the best case scenario for every other weapon, this weapon still gaps everything. Um, if I had to rank it, it'd be like Fated Strikes S tier, and then the second best weapon is like D tier. Is how I would look at it. Um, Now, for weapon traits, you are looking for Visions of Grandeur. In my opinion, this is a little bit better once you're in like Paragon Eternal, or Brave Machinations. Brave Machinations is just, it's like solid always, and better than Visions of Grandeur in Champion, for sure. But I think in Paragon and Eternal, Visions of Grandeur starts beating out as a capstone because the extra ults kind of just interact with the game very favorably. It's really, really nice to have your first ult line up with the DPS first ult, so you can go really big when the DPS wants to go big, and then you can go small when the DPS wants to go small. It just makes you tanky at the right times, and getting more ults in a key is also just very tanky too, right? Even if you aren't playing around it too much. Um, it does also give you an extra weapon use every ult. Not even close to the amount of extra weapon uses that Brave Machinations gives you, but still, it does give you extra uses, which makes it baseline just better than the other capstones. The rest of the capstones kind of just do damage. None of them are all that useful. But Visions of Grandeur, in my opinion, for endgame, and then Brave Machinations is good always, but falls off a little in the super late game. Um, Now, for your other traits, defensive traits just don't matter. First man standing is probably the best defensive node by some like single digit percentage, but this node does matter. You can see I upgraded in a very specific order, right? Um, Inspired Allegiance is just gives you, I think, like 10 to 15 seconds, probably more, around 10 seconds off of your Fated Strikes every time you use it, which is just honestly a little bit ridiculous for a minor offensive node. So this might be more important than having the correct capstone, uh, unironically. Um, at least this one is better than the field, compared to how much better the good capstones are than their fielders. So you're really looking for Inspired Allegiance, and then one of two of Visions of Grandeur and Brave Machinations. The rest of the minor traits are just really whatever. I would just click the one that gives me stat or something. If it says it helps you on the start of a pull or gives you stat, it's probably okay. Uh, but most of these are pretty mediocre outside of Inspired Allegiance. Um, Now, my opinion on crafting with weapons is that the first weapon you get in Champion track, you should purple bar to make sure it's Fist of Fate. And then you should do the same thing with Paragon, and then you should do the same thing with Eternal. You're not in too much of a rush to get the best Eternal weapon because the Paragon weapon and the Eternal weapon are only 30 item level difference, and you don't need to start upgrading your tree immediately anyway. So it's more important that you start progressing faster by getting the weapon earlier. So use your purple ingots on the first weapon you get in Champ, and then the first weapon you get on Paragon. But this trait attuning thing, I think you should only attune your purple one for a capstone for an eternal weapon. I do not think you should use this Legends Godstone until you have an eternal Fist of Fate. Probably an eternal Fist of Fate with Inspired Allegiance on it. But you do get a lot more blue ones than you do purple ones. You can only get these through the quick play chests over here from this guy. So use the purple ones very sparingly, in my opinion, only on an eternal weapon. Alright, gems. Gem time. So, my opinion, early game, you should just get as many different... I still consider myself in the early game in regards to gems. I think gems are kind of an almost infinitely scaling piece of loot. So I have all these sockets, and I don't have the means to combine them all into one. So I just think going for rank 2 in every single slot is your first priority. And then once you have a legendary and you can make a rank 3, you can do as I did and put that rank 3 into your legendary. I prefer blue. I think blue is best. If you have the neck, yellow is probably best. If you don't want to play Grandeur and do this ult spam thing, then I think you should probably do diamond. Um, but I'm not. It's either green or diamond. They're probably pretty close. But the reason I recommend Grandeur over Brave Machinations is because of these nodes that give you increased ult duration, increased main stat in your ult, increased ult duration again, combined with the fact my weapon is giving me a ton of ults, and then combined with the fact you have a tier set that's making your ult stronger right here as well, right? So there's just so many compounding variables that make the ult so strong. And for me, that means you go blue. It also just happens to give you spirit, which is probably your best stat defensively. So it's blue for me. But diamond and green are okay if you want to stay away from the ult spam stuff. Now, as you get more gems, you can see I did this as well. I think it's important to do it in breakpoints or rank 2. So I wanted this one specifically. Now, every single point all the way up to here is strong. So your rank 3 gem and your legendary is going to get you to this rank 4 node, right? Rank 4 is strong, rank 3 is weak. But rank 4 through rank 7, or is this 6? Sorry, counting in single digits is really challenging. No. Yeah, rank 4 through rank 7 is very strong. So I think it's worth it if you have the materials to do so. I do not, so I'm not doing it right now. To start putting some of these rank 2 gems, these different colored rank 2 gems, as blue ones to stack these further until you get to this. You don't want Resonating Soul 2 unless you can go all the way to the top. But you're looking at like 330 item level gaming if you're looking at stuff like this. So that's basically what you're looking at for gems. Now, tier sets, we're already 31 minutes into this video. Tier sets and legendaries are the last thing I'm talking about. I'm going to try to get through them quick. I know I'm rambly, sorry. But if you have the neck legendary and you want to play neck, you like the neck for whatever reason, you want the tier set out of Heart of Tazari. You really like this haste proc, really insane when you're using the neck and you're punching. If you're punching an AoE, I know I haven't talked about it much here. I wouldn't recommend punching an AoE. I've explored it a lot. I don't think it's that strong. And I don't think it's worth the risk because it's really challenging unless you have the neck. Obviously, if you have the neck, you're punching. But if you want it, if you insist on punching or you're playing the neck, you really want Heart of Tazari. If you aren't punching, you don't want Heart of Tazari at all. It's the worst one. The best one unanimously is definitely Cithral's Fall. We want this tier set no matter what build we're playing, so you're looking for Cithral's Fall tier set, period. It's just the most value among the tier sets. Now, for damage, you kind of want this Drakheim set. Obviously, I'm playing it right now. I don't have the setup to go for Cithrals, so I'm just sticking with the Drakheim set, which is fine because I'm ulting. I'm ulting so frequently, and my ult lasts longer, that this tier set is just a lot of offensive value. I don't consider it that strong defensively because if you're ulting, you're not dying. So being stronger in your ult doesn't really do much for you defensively, but insanely strong offensively, and it is just a tier set on a high level piece of gear, so not bad either way. Now, this Wraithtide one, the final dungeon tier set as opposed to adventure tier set, it's like good always. I would consider it better than Drakheim defensively, but not offensively. I would consider it better than Demon Brand defensively, but it's kind of just better than the adventure tier sets generally, and that's about it. A little bit underwhelming, but not bad, and pretty good for progressing through. Like if you're getting it out of the champion version of Wraithtide and you're looking to progress Paragon, I would say it's pretty good. But in the endgame, not that strong. Now, the dungeon tier sets, or sorry, the adventure tier sets are all pretty mediocre. I would say gems are just unanimously stronger than adventure tier sets, if you're comparing 1-to-1. But obviously, you can't pick and choose. I have an adventure tier set on. You're gonna have them on for a while if you loot them. So the best one is absolutely, let me get back to this loot thing real quick. The spirit one. This thing is just by far the best one. You really want this if you are forced to use an adventure one. In my opinion, as you're going through the leagues, you should be looking to farm Silken Hollow and Stormwatch. That's where this drops. Because if you don't have the option to target farm dungeon sets and you're having to do adventures, you should really be looking to get Stormwatch and Silken Hollow done as much as possible. Because best stat and 10% magic DR, it's like the best stat and the best effect at the same time. Um, After that, it's like the haste one is okay because movement speed's pretty nice for tanks. But the haste doesn't do anything unless you're fisting, so it's kind of whatever. And then probably the second best one is the expertise max health. We don't really care about max health, but we do care about expertise, so it's like you get some stat, but not really a useful effect. And then the crit one is just, I don't concern myself with threat gen too much. Like if I lose threat, it's because I did something horrible, so I don't consider that really a strong passive. And crit is just worse than expertise, so that's my opinion on tier sets. So again, to reiterate, we are looking for the Sithral's tier set and the Ransack tier set. And then if you're using the neck, the Demon Brand one. Sorry, Heart of Tazari. The name changed at some point during the beta, and I have always called it Demon Brand. And the final thing I want to talk about to wrap this up, as you can see with how long I ramble, it would have been a hour-long video if I wanted to talk about how to play legendaries. I'm just going to let you know which one's best. You are looking for the boots. The boots are just the best one. They do the most damage, and they're the best defensively. So you want the boots. After that, the neck is interesting, competitive on damage, but doesn't give you any substantial mitigation. The neck does give you access to Earthwell in AoE, which helps you protect your stone shield, but not through mitigation, so you aren't actually that much tankier because of it. The neck basically turns you into a Blood Death Knight, if you've played World of Warcraft, where you are living in cycles of your death strikes, your big heals. You have a big punch that's going to do AoE, heal you to full, and then you have to immediately go back to generating and then get back to your big punch, and you have to get all the way through the channel, and then you'll be safe again because it healed you to full. And then it's going to give you more serenities to heal you in between them, um, but it doesn't give you any DR, where the boots just gives you the most DR and more damage. So really want the boots. And lastly, here is the item they put in the game so you can be sad when you loot it. This thing makes your sibling live 20% longer, which for me in big AoE is like a quarter of a second. Your sibling also does damage. So this legendary basically just does some damage, but it just does less damage than the other ones and does nothing for you defensively. So you get to be sad if you looted this. Uh, But yeah, that's pretty much it. The last thing I will say about legendaries, you do have a little bit of autonomy over your legendary. There is a legendary in the neck slot. If I take a neck to the crafter and I purple reforge it, it has a small chance of being the legendary at that item level. You can see I have boots at 255. That's how I got them. That is in the game. It's supposed to be fixed. By the time you actually see this video, it might be fixed, and you should be using your purple bars on your weapons. But for me, I got enough purple bars that I got my weapon in each tier, and then I have them left over, so I hunted the legendary and I got it. You can do that to hunt the boots if you don't happen to get it out of Drakheim. Uh, but again, look at the patch notes closely. That might not be true by the time you actually are making the decision. Alright, I am going to make a follow-up video on all the interactions with the legendaries, so make sure to tune in for that so I can show you how to play with the boots, play with the talents that I haven't talked about, like Warden of the Temple. But that's it for this one, so thank you guys, and see you next time.